Hey, hey, my
Hello, hello,
name
hello.
is Crunk Chocolate, and welcome to End of Season Reports. This is Shades of Blues podcast content season, streaming live on FanFest. And then shout out to all our Patreonies out there watching as well. It's the off season, so that means we can relax a little bit on our tribalism. So here I am asking some of my favorite people about the clubs in the Premier League or Women's Super League. And today we are talking about the Women's Super League. Today we are talking about Hotspurs women. So I'm not supposed to call them Tottenham Hotspur, like just Spurs, Hotspurs women. So yeah, I'm trying to update the new lexicon. And today, we welcome one of our faves. Had her on, wonderful conversation. And now we have her back again. Shout out Hometown Glory, Shady Gang. Give it up for Lauren. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm hot, actually. I think I'm doing the complete opposite.
That's what I've been hearing.
Yeah. Well, I always feel like when I tell Americans, "Oh, we're going for a heat wave." Actually, it's not that warm, but for us, it is. So yeah, I'm good. I'm hot. I'm sweating, but I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me back. I had a great time last time. So.
Of course, yeah. All I've been hearing and seeing and reading about is the weather, and I saw, not to just completely go on a tangent that isn't football based, but I remember seeing a tweet that was going the rounds, and it was just like the typical weather where it shows the temperatures, and someone was like, they're freaking out about 30 degrees.
What I will say, and our caveat is that, especially in London, because we've got so many glass buildings, the heat gets trapped, and we don't have air conditioning freely available. So we struggle with the trapped, contained, muggy heat. It's different abroad. I don't mind the heat when on holiday, but yeah, it's not great here. So, but also we're British and we love to complain. So
yeah,
we're
that's fair.
too hot, too cold, too windy, raining. Complain about all.
But I was more talking about our American dumbness, where they see 30 degrees and they think 30 degrees Fahrenheit, not 30 degrees Celsius.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Also the
Yes.
I don't actually know what that is in Fahrenheit, but yeah, this is pushing it for us in terms of we're at our upper limits. And then we've actually had I was on my way home earlier, I could see the thunderstorms warning. So as soon as we go too hot, we just come back down to earth. So yeah.
And to be fair, it's 86 degrees Fahrenheit. That is
warm. That is warm. Okay.
Yes,
yeah.
That's warm.
Okay.
No, that's
Yes, I got my respect.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. That's the same temperature that's happening kind of around now at the Club World Cup and these games, that these players are basically like, we're dying, and they're playing these games at 11 a.m. They're playing these games at 2. So like the sun is peak. It's the hottest it's going to be all day, and they have these guys playing in whole ass stadiums, not even domes, not even covering or anything like that. So I
and
get
the humidity as well. Yeah, you can actually you see it. I've been watching some of the Club World Cup games. You can see it in the second half of games where the fatigue is really setting in. Like you can tell they're really tired. And you're looking, oh, the game must be nearly finishing. Oh no, we're still got half an hour to go, but they look like they're ready for the final whistle.
Doing the cramp stretching in the 57th minute of the game. It's like, that's not good. That's not great. It's not great.
It's a long season for them, I guess.
Well, the way that this show will work is there are 5 categories. We have kits, manager, squad, supporters, and front office. We will have our guests grade each category A through F. This is American style. Feel free to use pluses or minuses to either add or subtract from the grade. If you're stuck in between, because I had a lot of people that are like, do I want to give them a B or a C? And then, but then she's like, do you give them a B minus or a C plus? It just adds all these extra questions. Who knows where we'll go? But we'll start with kits. We'll do the home, away, and third.
Okay.
With Tottenham's Tottenham, they just have to have the white kit. It's tough. I mean,
yeah.
so, but I mean, when you look at it, but again, this is outside looking in. It is tough to do something fun with the shirt, but they didn't do anything with the shirt. It just looks like very run-of-the-mill home shirt. I mean, the blue sleeves and a little like stripes on the sleeve.
Yeah, I would actually say this is probably one of our better ones. There was one Nike kit where it was literally a plain white t-shirt, as in there's nothing on it. It was I think it was maybe our second kit under Nike after we signed the deal, and I was like, this looks like a pajama top. Like it was literally plain white, just the AIA logo and the badge and the tick, and it was like I just remember Harry Kane in it, and I was like, God, this is bland. So actually, this season, like they're trying. I would actually say I liked the home kit. I bought the home kit actually. I've got Jess Maz on the back of it, so. I feel like all of my preparations of watching like American high school shows, I'm ready now for my rating. So I'm gonna give the home kit an A- because I do think it is one of our better ones. But the bar is quite low, like you said, as a Spurs fan, because our home kit it's always quite boring. I mean, there's not much you can do with white, but with the home kit, at least when we play in Europe, we get the white shorts, and that's very Spurs, like culturally, in terms of wearing all white in Europe. So yeah, and we were in Europe this season as European champions, so I got to see the full kit in all its glory many times.
When I was younger, I tell a story about how for some reason Tottenham and Crystal Palace, whenever Premier League games would randomly pop up on TV on Saturdays, that it was always either Tottenham or Crystal Palace for some reason. And the all white that Tottenham would wear stressed me out as a kid. It's like, why are they wearing all white and then playing on grass? Like the kits get so destroyed.
Yeah.
And that disinterested me young, where I was just like, I don't know. I just did something about it. It felt off. But hey, that is good. Because you are right. The little bit of the blue on the collar, that it is additions. It does make it better than just a plain white tee.
Yeah.
Yes.
I do think our probably whoever washes our kits deserves a raise, because they've probably got some really nice bleach, because you're right, it's a lot of dirt to get out. But yeah, I did like this one. That was one that I remember at the beginning of the season when it was launched, I was like, okay, I'll buy this one. So yeah, happy with that one.
See, and what interests me is because like the blue and the stripes, this one is like, if I had to pick one of it, I guess this would be my favorite. Just because it's fun. It's trying to do something. It has like a partial collar, and yeah, I like the different shades of the blue in there and the piping, and there's some changing in it. It seems like they were getting adventurous with this one, so I'm interested on your thoughts with it.
We're completely honest, I hated this kit. Like, if I had to rate it an F. Anytime I saw that we were gonna wear this kit, I was like, oh, for God's sake. The shirt and the shorts are different shades of blue, first and foremost. And it's like, for me, that's a cardinal sin. Like, why don't they match? Like, why does it like? And then also the collar. If you look at the collar, like one side of the collar is thicker than the other. Like, why? It's not.
Oh, it is.
Yeah,
it is. Oh,
yeah. I don't know. For me, it's giving like boy in the striped pajamas, and I'm just like, I really did not like this kit. And also, this away kit reminded me too much of Martha Thomas. So, yeah, this one, I was like, no, absolutely not. And this is the one where, honestly, I think they put it on sale after a month because
it was doing so bad.
It was. I think it's not good. Not good at all.
Yeah, this is interesting. The colors in this shirt: Cobalt Bliss, Royal Tint, Binary Blue. Interesting.
Yeah, it's just a little bit I don't know, just a little bit. And also, I think in terms of it's quite a light kit in comparison to the fact that we wear white. So sometimes actually when I was like, when they were wearing this kit and watching it, I was kind of like, God, this isn't actually that dissimilar from like in terms of the home kit. So sometimes it just felt like we were still clashing with whoever we were playing. So yeah, I hope to never see that kit again. It's yeah, I really hate it.
Well, I mean, the way that it sounds, I don't think you will. I don't think you'll have to worry about it anymore. If the fan base didn't support it, they'll probably not even try to do anything close to that energy either, honestly.
Yeah, not a great one. But it's okay, they rescued it though with the third one, I think.
Yeah,
So,
and I said that the blue one is kind of my favorite, but I do like this color green. It is, and I honestly, oh, big thunderstorms right now.
Wow. Yeah.
I actually, yeah, no, this is now that I'm like taking closer look at it and have it pulled up, I actually really do like this one. What are your thoughts on it? First, before you get into it, how do you feel about collars on football shirts?
Yeah, I mean, time and a place. I do feel like there are some times where the collar is not great, but then there are times like I've got like last season Spurs' away kit, the navy one. That I really like that collar. So yeah, hit and miss. But to be fair, with the third kit, I really liked it. I like the little accents. For example, if you look at it, you can see some of the little trees that represents kind of Seven Sisters and stuff like that. So there's a lot of nod in terms of like the local area and stuff like that. And this was part of the I guess what Nike did, which I thought was a bit strange because I was like, okay, but to celebrate women's football because it had the inverted Nike tick. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've enjoyed this kit more so as we've gone along in terms of the season, just purely because the last time we wore a green kit in Europe, we got to the Champions League final. So it just kind of feels like green kits in Europe clearly seem to be our thing. So yeah. So I've got that one as well. Actually, I got that as a Christmas present with Olga Artinen on the back. So yeah, how would I rate? I would probably say I would rate this one an A because I do think I prefer the green one to the home kit. So, but yeah, 2 out of 3 is not bad for me.
2 out of 3 is
not
bad. Yeah. That is completely fair. Well, I didn't even hit the categories. So okay, let's change to the next category, shall we? Which is the manager. And yeah, I mean the season is what happened. I guess we'll get to kind of the announcement of the manager situation right now, which there are a few teams in the WSL right now who don't have a manager. It's kind of interesting. Not to make it about City, but the fact that we signed Jade Rose before we signed a manager is kind of wild. But yeah, how? What are your thoughts on Tottenham's manager of last season, and what grade would you give him?
I think grade has to be an F because I feel like you've got yeah. If you lose your job, then it's worst possible performance. Yeah, we really struggled, and I think it was quite obvious, especially towards the end of the season, that Robert had lost the dressing room. It kind of felt like watching them play. It just felt like there was no plan. There was no kind of real motivation and desire to win, which there's no. Haven't won a match since January. So yeah, I just think it is kind of whatever formation he was trying, it wasn't working. Every formation that came out, it was like, well, what the hell is this? It just felt really, I think, all over the place. And that's in the WSL, and then obviously in the domestic cups. we lost to Everton in the FA Cup. Like, we shouldn't be losing to Everton. The League Cup, we did well enough to get out the group, and then lost to West Ham. We shouldn't be losing to West Ham, especially because West Ham's Ryan Skinner as well. Like, what's the mean? Our old manager's knocking us out. So yeah, I just think it was a real shame, because it felt like it was a really good first season, but this season has just been, it just hasn't been good, and I just don't think Robert was able to motivate the squad to get themselves out of the hole that they were in, and then just tactically by the end it just felt like he was just a bit clueless. So yeah, not a good season, and not a surprise, or really that much disappointment, I think, to see him go. It's a shame because of all of the memories from the first season, and it felt like we were going somewhere, but at the end of the day, it's a results-based business. To finish one spot above the relegation zone is absolutely diabolical. That's our lowest ever finish, and probably, arguably the best squad that we've had. So, yeah, just not good.
Yeah, definitely got weird, because it looked like Aston Villa were about to go down, and then all of a sudden Tottenham started falling apart. I really did think that maybe Crystal Palace would be able to figure some things out, but they really just couldn't all season. They just gave away more goals than they could ever score, and that.
Yeah, I think they just really lacked quality, but as in quality of play. I don't necessarily think that they necessarily played very badly. I think they tried their best. It was just, they just weren't good enough in terms of the investments, I guess, that they made, or lack of investment to kind of get themselves up and obviously then stay in the league. Whereas I think Villa was always kind of why are Villa doing this badly? So I think their form towards the end of the season was where we probably would have expected them to be towards the start of the season. So it felt like they always kind of sorted themselves out. And then the thing about WSL, when you go on a run, you can literally climb up 4 or 5 places. Yeah, when you're kind of in the in the bottom half. So yeah, and it just, I mean, we didn't win a game after January, and that game was against Palace. So yeah, it was just really bad. So if you don't win games, you're not picking up enough points. I guess towards the end of the season, Robert managed to maybe stop the losses, and we were picking up draws, but it just wasn't enough. And we were very lucky, I think, that Palace were so bad that we weren't really at threat of being relegated, but at the same time, we're not going to have that luxury next season. So yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, just because London City Lionesses, I saw.
Yes,
earlier,
they've
just signed Van der Donk. Like, it's like, Michelle Kang's going to be moving mad in terms of the players that she's going to bring in terms of quality. So I just don't think we're going to have the luxury of the team that gets promoted being quite obviously the worst team in the league. That's not going to happen this season. So, we now need a new manager. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, speaking of that, I don't think it's been officially, but like Man City, they're talking with Andreas Jageritz about potentially taking over as their manager. Saw Matt Beard. Was that London City or was that Birmingham?
So I think he just got confirmed as Burnley manager today.
Burnley. Okay. Oh yeah, Burnley.
Yeah.
Wrong B. Yes, Burnley.
Yeah.
Which is really good for Burnley. That was kind of a shock.
That's a really ambitious move. I think this is the first season that they're going to go and be full time. But that's bringing in a manager that's got a whole heap. I mean, he's won the WSL, so you're just so much experience that you're bringing in. And I guess, I don't know, from a Spurs perspective, who knows? I think Matt Beard probably maybe would have been on the list of, if they wanted to go for somebody with league experience. I think the only person that I've seen us linked to at the moment is, his name's Alessandro. I can't remember what his surname is, but the former Roma manager in that period where Roma won or Serie A. I don't actually know what the women's equivalent of their league is called, but he won the Italian league a couple of times, and they had that really good run in Europe. That was his team. The scene that he's apparently on our
how do you
shortlist.
say it?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna have to, if that is going to be him, I'm gonna have to learn how to pronounce that. But yeah, we've been linked to him. That's been the only rumor really that's come out in terms of. So yeah, I guess we'll see. I think I've read a couple of things about him in terms of he likes young talent and to kind of build a profile, technical football. So I guess it's in the mold of what we were trying to do under Robert. But then obviously, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think I guess we'll kind of go through as we talk about the squad and then we talk about the club, because I don't think it is just a change the manager issue and all of our problems are solved. So yeah, like I don't know. I feel a bit nervous because London City Lionesses are obviously coming up, and then WSL's been expanded. So whoever finishes bottom, I think, goes down automatically, and then whoever finishes second bottom has to do a playoff. And I'm like, God, you know.
Yeah, that's one of the things.
Different situation for you, but
you would think you should be able to beat that team in the WSL too, respectfully. Like I guess it depends on who it is, because London City and Birmingham, both of those teams would, I think, give some of the bottom clubs a fit. They would definitely that would be a good match, I think.
Yeah, so it's kind of like. It's a shame because it's kind of cool. What's the objective? Just to not finish in those places. And I'm like, when is my club gonna?
Yeah, that's not great.
Yeah, take that leap forwards. But it's now something to be nervous about, because we spent half the season and we absolutely stank, like in terms of what we were seeing on the pitch. So yeah, it's a lot of whoever comes in next. It's a lot of work, I think, for them to do, to just improve morale. And try and get us playing football again. So yeah, I don't know. It always feels like with women's football, because it's not as heavily reported on, it just kind of feels like maybe our clubs are, actively doing a proper search for a new manager. It just kind of feels like you're just sat in silence. It's not like like men's football, where it just feels like somebody breathes
everything,
and then there's tweets about them. It just kind of feels like things just come out of nowhere. You're like, oh, okay, cool. Who's he? So yeah, it's we'll see what happens.
Well, yeah, because I'm trying to figure out. I probably should see. Yeah, because it was June 4th, so it's been over 3 weeks, almost 3 weeks. Was the last time I heard anything about Jeglerts. I need to figure out how to say his name if I'm saying it right. Him coming to City. That I haven't heard anything since. Like all this reporting came out. It's close. If it's close, you would think it would be figured out in 3 weeks.
Especially because you made a signing. It's just very strange, I think. Sometimes it's like, so do the women's teams operate independently of decision making, or is it you're not going to get an announcement until the Club World Cup is finished? When are we not going to get, and have we not, because it felt like the decision on Robert was delayed because the decision on Andrew was still being made, and it's just kind of like, well, it just provide fans with some clarity in terms of, I don't think negotiation is probably easier, I would say, in women's football, because most of the time you're going after managers who are out of a job or low compensation fees, and it's not like it's a club like City would struggle to afford that. So it's kind of like, well, and yes, I know our season starts later, so pre-season starts later, there's more time to prepare, but at the same time, it's Gareth Taylor, for example, was sacked many months ago, so why is the search taking so long? Because you've had an extended period of time where Nick Cushion was very clear in terms of, I'm only doing to the end of the season. So you do wonder, well, what are you guys doing?
Oh, I'm so happy to not have to see Nick Cushing's face anymore. Goodness gracious, that's a blessing. A blessing. Okay, yeah, let's move to the next topic, which is the squad. The players on this team, like you said, it's a decent squad and should not be where
Mm.
Tottenham ended the season. Every single time I would watch Tottenham women play, and well, it was more at the beginning of the season, but I saw a player on the wings with a bow, and I'd be like, "All right, she's on that squad." I
Oh
remember,
yeah.
and I remember being like when she left City, and I actually was upset that she left, but then it was like, oh no, she saw the training, she saw, was it the Mary Fowler? She saw Mary
Yeah.
Fowler training, she saw Lauren Hemp training, like Chloe Kelly there. Nah, she was just like, nah, I gotta get out of here. It's gonna be tough for me. And it's very similar to like Chloe Kelly when she saw Aoba getting in there and Aoba's balling out, and she's like, oh no, I gotta get out of here. So like I was hopeful for Haley Rosso at Tottenham. She never really seemed to kind of get her thing situated. And honestly, there are a few players on this squad that I rate, like Naz. Like I'm actually a really big fan of her. She seems like a baller. But I'm here to ask you, what are your thoughts on the squad, and what grade would you give them over the season?
Yeah, I mean, I guess going back to to be fair, Haley Russell, I think, is a big example of maybe why Robert has had to go. Obviously, to lose Celine Bizet in the way that we did, Haley was the direct replacement for that. Her first game against Palace, she was phenomenal. And to be fair, for another couple of games, played really, really well. Picked up some injuries, and then I don't know. It kind of feels like something happened behind the scenes because she just disappeared.
Yes.
And then we've seen it kind of reported out of Australian media that she's not happy with the style of play, that she wanted to play more counter-attacking type football, and it's like, yeah, but then did you not read the brief? Because we're not a counter-attacking team, so it's kind of like sometimes you're like, okay, but we don't play that style of football, and you would have known that before you signed. And it's a shame because I think somebody of her quality and of her experience, especially when you think about the form that she's had for Australia, probably more so for at club level, you think, well, why hasn't she been able to replicate that this season? And I think when you hang your hopes on that type of player and then they underperform, it's just like, and then we just don't see them at all in the squad towards the end of the season. Yeah, just disappointing, really. I think the whole squad, I would say, has been disappointing. I think there's not many players that can hold their head up high and say I had a good season. Obviously, Beth, England, probably without her we would have been relegated because she was the only one that was scoring goals in that attacking department. Molly Bartripp, I think, had a good season and had to struggle with which centre half partner am I going to play with today? So I think, Molly's always kind of been there. But apart from that, I think, Jess Nass, I love Jess. I think she's such a great talent. She's one of our own, come from our academy. But yeah, this season it's just kind of been. I always just want to see a bit more like oomph from her when she plays. Like, be more aggressive in what you do in your decision making when you take on defenders. It's kind of like if you just worked a bit harder, because it always just looks like she's playing within herself. And I think the season before last, it kind of felt like she'd stopped doing that, and obviously she started to make the England squad, and then it's just been I guess a poor season on her part. And yeah, I just think we struggled to create chances. We struggled even more to score goals, except Beth. I think for me, the stat that sums up the entire season is that the last time Martha Thomas scored a WSL goal was in December 2023.
Oh.
Yeah. And she pretty much played nearly every game this season, whether it was starting or off the bench. And I think if you've got a striker that literally didn't score a single goal across a whole league season and a half, we have a big issue in terms
That's
of.
not great.
Yeah, because I think defensively we were shambolic at times. Like Claire Hunt, for example, she would come in and help. That didn't do anything. I remember it took 6.5 hours for me to get to Manchester because of the traffic. to go to the Spurs City game that was at the Etihad, and Bunny scoring after 20 seconds. I had barely taken my seat. And she absolutely bullied Claire, and Claire had to be taken off at halftime, and she never recovered after that game, I think. And that game was in like November. I think just too many poor individual performances. But I think it goes back to, well, it's a managerial thing, right? Because you can't, if you've got that many players who are underperforming, then it's clearly what's going on in the training pitch, because it's not one or two players having a poor season. You think, okay, cool, fair enough. But when it's like 6, 7, 8, 9, you've got a real problem. So like from a grading perspective, a D+, because I literally, and that plus is for Beth and Molly, because it just wasn't good enough. I mean, I think on paper our squad is much better than 11th, and yeah, I just think, you know, I don't think that there's hardly any of them can sit there and say, you know, I had a good season, because they would be lying to themselves if they said that. So yeah, and it's, I don't know. All I can hope is that, well, you guys are going to have to get better, because most of your contracts have all been renewed. We gave Martha Thomas 3 more years. For what reason? I have no idea. Man. So yeah, it's a tough one.
Who are the players being tied to the club this summer? Are there any?
Yeah, so you've got, Martha Thomas was renewed. So Gartner, who's one of my favourite players, was also renewed. Well, the option was triggered. Ash Neville's option was triggered. We're still waiting on Molly Bartrip and Luana's, because they were actually out of contract. Rybrink, who Robert brought in on a 6-month contract in January, who has been shambolic, also had her extension triggered. I have no idea why, if you thought you were sacking this manager, because that was his player. The longest contract that we've ever given out in the summer to Anna Cheeky for 4 years. I don't want to be rude, horrific player. And I'm like, I cannot work. I feel like we're even going to struggle to shift her out of the squad. So like, there aren't actually that many players, bar maybe like Rosella Ayan, because even Kit Graham's contract was triggered. So there's not that many players who are leaving the squad. I think when we saw the announcements in terms of who was being renewed, it was then kind of, we were all then starting to think, oh, is Robert staying then, since we're just retaining his entire squad? So yeah, I think we're going to have to rely on maybe some player sales or some loans to make room in the squad for whoever the new manager may be, because there were some bad players that we could have just let them go, and for some reason we decided to renew them.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and because I mean, they're obviously Chelsea are doing Chelsea things, like they're being tied to Lily Ioannis and all these other players that they're trying to possibly grab, and City appear to be wanting to try to do something. Arsenal, it looks like they're going to bring back Chloe Kelly. They're also in the race for Olivia Smith or Taylor Hines at Liverpool. The top seems to be trying to refuel, and not necessarily saying Tottenham want to try to be one of the top clubs, but like you were talking about the London City, they're obviously going to be spending money and trying to grow their quality. Everton, oddly enough, seem like they're stepping up. Brighton as well. Aston Villa can't be as they ended the season. What was it, on a 5-game winning streak? It's going to be a much more difficult league next year, and I don't have any negative emotions towards Tottenham. So and also I know it's women's, but when you have those storied clubs names in a league, that always helps draw attention and eyes. I wonder how the WSL would feel like that. Would they much rather have a Tottenham, a Liverpool, and Everton being successful, or would they welcome Birmingham, Burnley finally, obviously it takes some time to get their way up, or London City. Like what would they want? Do they want these kind of new clubs to bring energy and help change things, or would it be best for like the marketing and broadcasting dollars to have these just names that the average fan will see and know?
Yeah, I think that's even for me as a fan of it. I see we're a Big Six club. We're judged in those standards. We're very, very rich. We're a rich club, and I look and think it's a stain on the record of the club that our women's team are performing in the way that they are, and that there's that lack of investment, because it's like, surely you should be looking at your peers. And don't get me wrong, entered the game much later than an Arsenal or Chelsea, but at the same time, it's kind of like we shouldn't be outpaced by Brighton. We shouldn't be being outpaced by Villa. And I think that's where the frustration comes in, because like I went to Spurs for the season ticket holders did an end of season event, and you had Vicky Jackson from a coaching perspective, which I thought that was odd at the time that Robert wasn't there. Maybe that says why. And obviously Vicky is then, after literally 2 days after that, or 2 or 3 days after that, then it was announced that she's leaving Spurs, and she's been with us for a good, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. She's going to Emma Hayes made the call, so she's going to manage, I think, one of the US women's national, the under 20s or something like that. So she's gone, but then you have Rebecca Capelhorn, who is a board director but responsible for the women's team, and talking about the ambition and the strategy, that they see Spurs as they want us to be competing with you guys that are in that top 4. That's the ambition, and it's like, oh, that doesn't look like it in terms of what we're experiencing in terms of the actions, but. Yeah, I do think when you actually look at, for example, like the top 10 either viewed games or attendances, Spurs are the only club outside of that traditional Big 4 who make that list, purely because we've always been we've got the North London derby, you've got Spurs Chelsea, you've got that historical type rivalry. So it's kind of like from a marketing perspective, it's important that we're there, but just from a brand, like from an actual internal brand, we should absolutely be there. So, but when you think, oh, okay, I'm going to give a contract extension to a striker that hasn't scored a league goal in 18 months, you think,
yeah, it's not great.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, what is the decision making? And I think even for us trying to attract players in that kind of mid layer, like we're based in London, like we've got fantastic facilities, all of these type of things. It's like, it shouldn't be hard to attract better players. So then what is it? Is it the fact that we don't want to pay? And then we have this argument on the men's team, and it's kind of like, why won't you pay? Like, we can't attract certain players because you have a wage structure that cannot be broken. And then it's like, so yeah, it's just, I guess, always being told we need to do things sustainably, like my name's Greta Thunberg. Like I'm just tired of hearing that, because it's like that for me is just an analogy for, we're not going to give it our all, but you need to be patient. It's like, how long do we need to be patient for?
Yes.
And we just fall behind, because like you said, the gap between the Big 4 is only getting bigger. Chelsea are just like collecting infinity stones in terms of their playing squad, and Arsenal this is the best opportunity they're going to have after winning the Champions League to really reshape that squad and reinvigorate it in terms of lowering their age profile. City bruising season, and it's showing what happens if you don't have a squad. So you're going to need to add to your players, and United are going to have to gear up, because they've got Champions League. Well, if they qualify, they've got Champions League football coming. So it's a case of those clubs are going to continue to make investments. You can see Brighton and the ambition and those type of things, and I'm like, it's only going to get harder. So it's kind of like, why are we making things even more difficult for ourselves by thinking, okay, let's push in 2 years' time, but why not now?
And all very fair. It's especially with the expanding 2 more teams into the league, that's going to help You would think that's going to help the Champions League coefficient as well, instead of like teams 2 and 3 having to play each other out. Maybe the first top two get automatic spots, and then that 3 and 4 can play each other, and then 3 gets in the Champions League as well, and 4 ends up in the Europa. Like, if that is what ends up happening, that could really help and be a huge like game changer. It might be the incentive that a team like Tottenham, unfortunately, like you would hope that just for the sake of having a good squad, they would do their jobs and, you know, bring the interest. But if it's a better possibility for them to get European football is what pushes them over the edge, then maybe it is what it is. So maybe just one more year. Maybe just hold tight for one more year.
I'm tired. I'm tired of waiting.
Oh man, you poor thing. Yeah, no, I completely understand that. Well, yeah, let's move to the supporters. I mean, the way that you made it sound like, hey, we're coming to these games, we're here rooting. You traveled all the way to Manchester through traffic to watch your team get smashed. Like, the supporters are out there doing their thing. With WSL, one of the halftime clips, videos that they would show a lot when I was watching, it was about the Tottenham fan base and their Pride supporter group, and like Tottenham is getting the visual support from the media, so that's a good nod in my thoughts. So what are your thoughts, and what grade would you give the Tottenham women's supporter fan base?
Yeah, do you know what I think? Despite it being a really tough season, I think the commitment and the love of the team is absolutely there. I think in terms of the fan base. So I think from a grading point of view, I'd probably say I think B plus. I think I guess I'll start. Yeah, let me start with what I've loved. Like, yeah, for me, like I go home and away. I commit a lot of time and effort and money into following this team around the country, but I'm not the only one. There's a group of us, and yes, I would say our fan base isn't the same as the same size as an Arsenal or even a Chelsea, or but the commitment is there, and I think we were actually I saw the stats that came out. We were actually one of the only teams, I think, to have double-digit growth in terms of attendances. So I think the club are trying their best and trying to see what and learn from other clubs in terms to drive that attendance. I think where we have the issue is that we tend to get a lot of people into the main stadium to watch a game, but the actual attendance at Brisbane Road is quite static and hasn't really grown since we moved there. So I think that's probably the next step in terms of, well, how do we grow the people that want to come to Leighton week in, week out, and watch those matches. But yeah, I think considering that, yeah, and I have I'm quite dramatic in nature, but like when I wake up on a match day thinking, God, we haven't won a game in 3 months, but I'm still going anywhere. I think that willingness and the desire, it doesn't waver. I often see when the players have lost this season, a lot of them, they'll tweet or whatever, or post on Instagram and say, "Oh, stay with us, Spurs fans." So we're not going anywhere. We actually don't go anywhere. Like it's like we've done a relegation battle and we're still here, guys. I just hope that we can be rewarded. I think some of the feedback that came out of the end of season event, it was like, can we get our own Spurs women merchandise, for example? Because other clubs have got that. Like, we don't have anything. Like this year they decided to not, because you can the calendar, the season before they finally did a women's one. This season they didn't bother to do it, and it's just kind of like we want our own, I think, identity as Spurs women supporters. And obviously, like for me, I watch both teams. I go to men's games as well, but I think it would just be nice, I think, for the club to give a bit more commitment to Spurs women. I think Man City, I actually think you guys are the best in terms of how you create that kind of one club kind of ecosystem and hold on equal footing. I think our marketing is getting better, but I think there are mistakes that the club make which make it more difficult, I think, in terms of growing our fan base, especially in Brisbane Road.
Yeah. City, this was a few years ago, but I remember there was the Man City account. At the beginning of our pod, we were always raging that they weren't posting on the Man City women account. And the whole thing was, hey, one club, one passion, same city, same passion. We're trying to grow the name of the team first. And now everything is going through that Man City women's account, and it's really growing. You can tell, you can see the concerted effort. They have their own merchandise as well, and there is a huge pride in things in the club. How you and even like when we look at attendance numbers, obviously Arsenal, they're top because they play at the men's stadium all the time, and they basically announced that all their games except for like early UWCL games are going to be at the Emirates.
All their league games at the Emirates now.
And Man City had a Manchester derby last year at the Etihad, and the attendance was abysmal. Like, I was embarrassed. It was, and that is kind of like the next step, is how do you really get the fan base to show up to the games? What I will say is I'll give the players a lot of bail, because the scheduling has been horrendous this season. Like, so many of the games were on the same day. Man City women would start like 2 hours before the men's, and when you're forcing the teams, if you're because there's a lot of overlap between the men's and the women. So if you're making them choose, exactly.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so like that I want to see some sort of change next year. I won't, I guess, see it on the ground daily because I'm not over in Manchester, but I still would like to believe that whatever changes happen, I'm very tapped into the supporters group and a lot of those people. So if there is positive change on the marketing standpoint from the City Women's, I will hear about it. And yeah, not like something as simple as like a calendar. Like, you already have the photographers. Like, what does a calendar cost? The fact that you don't do that for the women's team, that is very important, because it's small things like that. It's like a slight. Like, it's just like, what? You can't even do a calendar.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, in terms of the actual cost in the grand scheme of things, just because you're thinking about the numbers of what you would sell, it's just kind of like sometimes you have to do things for the sake of doing things, because it's just a good thing to do in terms of for fan engagement. And I agree with you. I think from a marketing standpoint, I think Arsenal obviously have had a fantastic strategy, which I think everybody can learn from, regardless, because I think their ability and what has been able to convert to get so many bums on seats when it comes to those matches, but also I think some of the stuff that they've done across the men and the women's team, it's just kind of, sometimes you need to make sure your women's team are visible to, like, and I just feel like it's so easy these days, especially when it comes to like Instagram, because you can do co-post. Sometimes you just think, do a bit more stuff. Like let's make sure that the men's team acknowledge that the women's team exists. Just all of that, because you always see it the other way around. Like, if the men's team have a big match, you see the post on the women's page, like, oh, good luck to the men's team in the Europa game or whatever. Sometimes it's just they don't do that enough, I think, the other way around. But I also think this, like, again, the stadium, in terms of how you market those games, is critically important, because you've got to remind people that the fixture has moved and not just go on the reputation of what the match is. And I actually think Spurs, for example, in the opposite position, where they decided that the 3 stadium games this year with Arsenal, Chelsea and United, we didn't score a single goal in any of those 3 stadium games. And I'm like, for me, I come from the angle of, so what is it, do you think, about these particular games and our performances where we didn't score any goals is going to encourage people who don't come to Brisbane Road to come and watch this team?
That's fair.
Like, it's kind of like, sometimes you've got to think about doing a winnable game, and yes, maybe you might have a fewer number of fans, but at the same time, it's like, at least we would have seen a goal. Yeah, so I think it's a tough one. But you would hope. I think the scheduling is a big issue, and I think it's something that we raise, for example, within because I'm in the supporters club for Spurs women, and we kind of always feed back. And there have been a couple of occasions actually where, because the match hasn't been televised, the fixture, the kickoff time has been changed because it's clashed with the men's team. So, for example, I think there was one weekend where we were playing Liverpool, both men and women's, on the same day. So they gave enough time so if fans were travelling between them. And, you know, from a Spurs perspective, that's not a huge number of fans, but at the same time, it's important to do that. And I do think from a WPLL, or whatever they call themselves these days now, they keep rebranding themselves, and the Premier League, I think next season there's going to be even more of a concerted effort to stop putting these clashes on, and that they're going to try to work those calendars and those schedules together, because you're right, it's kind of, fans shouldn't have to choose. You shouldn't have to feel conflicted about, you know, which team you're able to go and watch, because it's not nice. And obviously that there are a lot of people that, if they have, for example, got season tickets to the men and the women's team, they're probably, you know, there are going to be people that go to the men's match because you think, well, look how much money they're paying for that season ticket. Of course they're going to want to go. And also the penalties, I think, of sometimes of being a season ticket holder on the men's team. If you don't attend those matches, they will, the likelihood that they would penalise you, you know, as you're not utilising your season ticket, for example. But, you know, would they accept, I didn't go to this match because I went to watch the women's game, and, you know, all of these type of things. But I think Aston Villa are trying this season where they're going to give people ticketing points for attending women's games. So I think they're going to use that to try and maybe drum up attendance to Villa Park. I think it's good to see different clubs trying different things. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I think from a supporter's point of view, commitment is there. I think we just need both of our clubs to do a bit more to help things out.
Yeah, and I mean, it goes to our final category is the front office, and those are the people who can make the correct changes and help raise the club, hopefully to higher standards. I mean, between the manager's grade and the player's grade, I can only imagine what you're about to grade this front office.
Yeah, it's very hard because I feel like I sound like a broken record. I feel like I'm always complaining about the way that the club is run, but it comes from a sense of frustration because I just can and think they should do more. So yeah, I guess from a grading, we're still down in the D's, guys. Because I think I don't know. I think they obviously left Robert in the role, even though, you know, it was many months that we didn't win a game. I think, yeah, looking back, was that the right decision, or should they have made a change earlier? I think some of the players that have been brought in have not been good. They've struggled to adapt to the teams. I think there's a recruitment issue within the club, and hearing the recruitment strategy described actually at the Spurs Women's end of season events, I have true concerns, because it was explained as players that play against us, some players that we know, and then agents who make recommendations. And I'm like, that is not a good scouting strategy at all. So yeah, there's some concerns I think there. And I think the main thing for me, and I say this on the men's side as well, I just want the actions to match the ambition. I don't like to hear the club sit here and say, we want to be up there, we want to be competing, but it doesn't seem like there's many, concerted efforts to, in order to, what are we actually going to do in terms of actions to get us there quickly. And for me, telling me about a new training facility or an academy facility that you might build in 10 years time, that doesn't cut that doesn't cut it for me. I'm really sorry. It's kind of a case of, what are we going to do to improve this squad this summer to make sure, because I think when you look amongst our fan base, we're all thinking, you know, if there aren't any wholesale changes, we could be in trouble. And like, you know, I said it already, our club should not be in trouble. So I think I would like to feel that the club and the board just care a bit more. Like sometimes it just very much feels like Spurs Women exists because it has to, because every other club has got a women's team. And I don't know, sometimes I look and think, you know, when you look at what Chelsea have done, obviously, well, effectively sending their women's team to themselves, but kind of separating the women's team out to then look for external investment. And you know, Alex has come in, or as I call him, Serena's husband. But you know, and you look at his kind of investment into the team. I'm kind of like, you know, would Spurs ever go for that type of model? Is that what we need? If the club won't invest, will someone else do it? I don't know, but yeah, I just think we're at a point where there's only so much, you know, there's only so many times I can be told that we're trying to do things sustainably, because I don't know what that means. Like I really don't know what that means. When you can, I don't know, pay 180 grand a week for somebody like Timo Werner, but you can't spend 100 grand on a really good women's player, because actually, like, if you think about what you could bring in for 100 grand for one player, you could get a really good player.
You really could.
So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like where it's an investment thing, and how quickly that they want to really attack the market, because I think we've fallen behind, and yeah, that gap to me only feels like it's getting bigger.
And that's and not to kind of go to the bigger prospect of things. London City, like, certain people feel a way about the spending that Michelle King does, but if it forces other clubs to then have to spend in order to keep up, that's what we need in the game. We need people who are all in to this women's side, where, like you said, 100,000, 200,000, those can bring in very solid players, or at least it can bring in really good young players that you can then build and grow with, and that's what you can then, like, build the future of your club on. And just like, hey, yes, we may not be good now, but we have these players who are like Lioness U19, U20, U21 players, and who knows what we could do, because Lauren Hemp was brought little baby when she joined City, and now she is this monster on the pitch, and there's so much pride in those things. And City always does a good job at, hey, these 18, 19, and 20-year-olds, they're going to be the future. Yeah. And, like, did we have to just rob Aston Villa for a couple of players? Yeah. Sometimes that's what you got to do. And got them for, honestly, kind of like terrifyingly affordable prices on top of it. And that's even for women's football, like, standards. Yeah, it's sustainability in women's football, like, it doesn't make any sense, because
absolutely. And I think, do you know what, going back to the Michelle Kang thing, I think it's one of those, I think for me, politically and how I view the world, it's scary to me in terms of, I think, seeing like that hyper capitalism in women's football, because we just haven't seen it much. And I do think, and I've always been pro having a regulator within football to make sure, because I do think it's not a good environment or a good kind of nature and operation if we shift women's football, where you've got a super owner who can say, I'm going to move my manager to that team, and then I'll move them back. I'm going to move this player to that team. I don't think that is where the women's game should be going. However, where I actually feel, and I reserve my anger, is a case of that is happening whether we like it or not. So you have to react to that. And I look and think Spurs have to react to that, because you've got a team that is coming up where, I mean, Van der Donk is a WSL winner, still a starter for the Dutch national team. Like, last season, the alarm bells should have been ringing when she brought Aslani. Like, it was kind of like, it's kind of a case of, you know, whether we like it or not, it's happening. and we could even, that's another team that could be coming into the league where we fall further and further behind. And it just makes me angry in terms of, well, what is my club what is my club doing about it? It's a case of, and yes, okay, yeah, Michelle Kang's got whatever money that she's being backed by, and she wants to spend and her investment and grow. But yeah, I do think that the overall narrative, I think, in the way that football is being run, it should absolutely be there. But also, I think we need to talk more about in terms of, well, why can't other clubs step up? Because I don't think we're at a point now, even when I look at a Chelsea, like, my honest opinion, I don't think we're, when I have this conversation with an Arsenal fan, I'm, well, get your money up. Do you know what I mean? It's not as if Chelsea are abundantly richer as a football club, more so than Arsenal are. So it's a case of, if that is the standard that is being set, then you should demand your club, depending on where you are in terms of what you're competing. You should be demanding that your club step up as well, because yes, okay, we need maybe football operations to change, but that bar is being set. And I think actually I view Chelsea as especially domestically within the UK and what they do with that women's team, that desire to win. I joke about it, and I always say, I mean, and obviously I can't really joke so much now because Arsenal have won the Champions League, but prior to that, it was kind of, I always say Chelsea's number one ambition is to win. Arsenal's number one ambition is to be the biggest team. Those are two different things. And I think you've got to follow in, if there's a team that is setting their ambition to win and you can see the actions, then you should be demanding the same of your club. And I think we can have a separate conversation about capitalism within football and what we're seeing. But yeah, I think it's too easy to just sit there and complain and say, oh, well, they should be banned. No, I don't think they should, because if we don't have teams like a Chelsea, or even if we don't actually at the moment have a Michelle Kang, what is the trigger for other clubs to step up and do more if these clubs don't exist?
Yeah, well, exactly. And I guess that's WPLL's job to try to figure that out, because, they were throwing things at the wall. They were like, no relegation? Does that mean you guys will spin? They're trying to throw these ideas out, but really, because I mean, we're seeing it with all these teams falling out once they land in the championship, that there's less requirements to pay staff and retain players, and so they just fold. They're like, well, if I don't have to spend this money, well, then why not? So maybe it's raise the floor of spending. I'm not really a big fan of putting caps in sports, especially caps in a league that is struggling to get other teams to spend in the first place. And I know asking certain teams to spend more, but also, do you want to be in the big leagues or not? So it's kind of like this tough thing where they need to figure out a collaboration where, the Premier League and the Championship, even though they're together, they somehow obviously do not mesh well together. They feel like they're in competition with each other. WSL and WSL2, they need to work harder to just become one beautiful, obviously they're two tiers, but becoming one company with the same expectations, and just obviously lower the budget. All right, we'll just cut the budget in half for the teams in WSL2 because there are less expectations. You're not on TV as much, you're not getting the money that we're getting. But that's the more the league takes themselves seriously, that's when the fans will take them more seriously. That's when broadcasting will take them more seriously, and that will involve spending money that you might not possibly get back immediately. Yeah,
absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think it's what the WPL, I think, also need to do. You've got to think about the mechanisms that you're getting in place from the broadcasters. How do you spread that money around so actually you don't get WSL teams saying, oh, do you know what? I don't like the new regulations. I can't bother to spend that money. I'm just going to pull out. We've got to, it's a case of how do they create a pot to top up those teams so they stay in the league and they don't have to drop out. And, and it can't just be like a bottomless pit of money so they can get away with not doing what they should be doing. But yeah, we've got to find a way of, because that's exactly what the football pyramid is about in men's football, in terms of all of the money that comes into the Premier League. And don't get me wrong, you will find clubs in League Two who feel like they're not benefiting enough on the football pyramid. But the football pyramid exists to spread that money down into the leagues. The reason why we have the Saturday 3 p.m. blackout in the UK is to encourage people to go and watch League One, League Two, Championship games. So it's not a case of, oh, there's a Premier League, I won't go, I'll just sit there and watch television. So there are different mechanisms in place to try and spread that love out, and it's not a perfect system. If you go speak to Gary Neville, owner of Salford, he doesn't like it, but I think the WPF have got to, especially because they own, they own both leagues. They've got to think about different ways of doing that. And yeah, I don't know. Some of their ideas have been scary, because I think, when removing relegation and all of this stuff, was being floated about, I think you've got to understand the culture of the country that you're in. I think there are things that we can learn from the American model. But you can't just apply the American model into the English model, because actually when it comes to, whether it's the caps and the drafts and all of that, that's supported by a really strong collegiate system. Nobody watches Bucks in the UK. We don't have that level of collegiate system in terms of promoting talent. It relies way more on the academies of the football clubs themselves. So I think there are nuances within the English game, which I hope, and as we've seen from the announcements, that you've got to respect them and you've got to understand them, but they've also got to be, I think, really open-minded in terms of making sure there's money flushed. And I think, we're going to get to a point if you are going to get a football club in the league like a Chelsea, where you've got £20 million investment into the club, what mechanisms are you putting in place to make sure that whatever broadcast rights are going to a Chelsea or whoever it is, that whoever's bottom of WSL2 is at least seeing the benefit of that? And yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I'm very happy that they decided not to remove relegation. And I say that as somebody that would probably benefit us this season. But for me, like, football is competitive. And especially within England, within Europe, promotion and relegation is a fundamental part of our sport. So yeah, I was losing my mind when I saw that was potentially being discussed, and I actually asked about it, and to get an update from a Spurs perspective at the Spurs end of season event, just to make sure that I just didn't want us to be one of the clubs peddling that idea, because it's an easier life. But yeah, I think we'll see. I think the new broadcast deal that's been announced for next season, we're going to see more games than ever on TV. So yeah, I hope that more money is being flushed into women's football, but we also need owners like Daniel Levy, where I've heard him discuss women's football as a loss leader. Jim Ratcliffe, it just feels like at any given opportunity he keeps telling us that United Women are not important to him. We need owners to start, or chairman, or whoever they are. We need them to start kind of caring and not just being like, oh yeah, cool, whatever, because it's the impression that you create as well, that it's kind of like women's football is not a second class version of football. It's a sport in its own right. And I think this is where it's a case of, I think the WPLL need to learn how, for example, tennis is operated, because women's tennis and men's tennis, they've got to learn from other sports where you've got equal prize money, where things coexist, rather than it being a spin-off of men's football, because the football is football. It's not owned by a gender. I always go to my rant.
No, it's great. I love it. It's this was a wonderful conversation about Tottenham and just growing the game in general. I very much appreciate your perspective, and thank you for giving me a bit of your time today. Before we get you out of here, please plug yourself, let people know where they can find you and the things that you do.
Yes. So my on socials is @Lauren Coys. It sounds like Common News Spurs. But yeah, you can find me always I talk about Spurs all the time on HomeTown Glory. That's a Spurs specific pod. And then you can also hear me talk about men and women's football more generally on Gold Diggers UK as well. So yeah, that's where to find me. I am always tweeting about football or some other sport. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. Well, Shady Gang, we have one show tonight. We have plenty of time to rest, eat your foods, drink some fluids, watch some Club World Cup, and we will see you tonight. But until then, you know the vibes. Shady Gang, Shady Gang, Shady Gang.